and welcome you to this short program tonight, which actually should be pretty exciting because of the work that has been done by the young people in the Future Philanthropist program, which is actually the predecessor to the Three Pillars Initiative. So for those of you who may be new and have not heard about Three Pillars before, it is a philanthropy service organization, a nonprofit itself, that has its mission as developing youth philanthropy education programs around the country. This is a vision that came about more than 10 years ago through the establishment of the Future Philanthropist program, sponsored by the Oak Park River Forest Community Foundation. And that program really was about teaching the next generation of community leaders by them going through a learning program on the art, science, and business of philanthropy. That actually led to the TPI effort, which was the national effort to scale this program around the country. And then that happened. The name Three Pillars Initiative actually comes from the three pillars of philanthropy that we talk about, which are granting money, raising money, and volunteering time and service. And that is the essence of the program, knowing that this is a leadership group that is in development and at the formative age of juniors and seniors in high schools. Schools has an opportunity to really become the leaders of their generation. So I want to introduce first a number of individuals that are going to speak briefly tonight on their experiences, starting with Molly O'Donnell. Molly is a 2015 graduate of the Future Philanthropist program. She is a graduate of the University of Maryland in 2019 and currently serves as the Corporate Engagement Coordinator for the Good Food Institute. Next is Sydney Rayburn. Sydney is a Future Philanthropist program class of 2018. She is just graduating in the next month or so from Brown University and is on the TPI board from the very beginning. Remy Sheehan, who is also a Future Philanthropist graduate of class of 2015, also University of Illinois graduate of 2019, is the Senior Program Officer for the Three Pillars Initiative. Kendra Lutz is the Program Officer for the Greater Grand Island Community Foundation. We're pleased to have Kendra with us tonight. The Greater Grand Island Community Foundation actually is the #1 very first affiliate program of Three Pillars Initiative. So we're happy you can be with us, Kendra. Grace Dirks will also speak. Grace is a 2018 graduate of FPP, a Fordham graduate, again, about a month away from her degree at Fordham, and a TPI board member. Also Claire Jackson, who is a recent, will become a recent graduate of Trinity High School in Oak Park, in River Forest. And she will talk to us specifically about one of the aspects, in fact, and actually the third pillar, which is strategic volunteerism in the community and how that really happens under this program. And finally, Joe Smith, who has been a mentor since this program started in 2010, 2011. He's one of the founding directors of TPI and currently serves as Secretary Treasurer Pro Tem of the board. And he will be fielding and managing questions at the end. So that's a quick introduction. I'd like to turn this over to Molly, if you would start us off with your presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick. So can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Awesome. Okay. So hi, everyone. As Rick mentioned, I'm Molly O'Donnell, FPP class of 2015, and I graduated from the University of Maryland in 2019 with a degree in environmental science and policy. I now work at the Good Food Institute, which is a nonprofit dedicated to building a secure, sustainable, and just protein supply through innovation in alternative proteins like plant-based and cultivated meat. And today I'd like to share a little bit about how FPP changed my life and ultimately supported me in pursuing a high impact career in philanthropy. So the first aspect of FPP that I think is really special is just how much autonomy FPP students are given in high school. To be giving away real sums of money and be on the other side of a decision-making process that early in our careers was incredibly empowering and helped FPP students hone both decision-making and leadership skills, as well as challenge us to work collaboratively and compromise with the rest of our cohort, which is something that's very relevant for the professional world, but is also something that you don't necessarily get in a school group project or extracurricular because the stakes just aren't really the same. And as an aside, after the FPP interview process of interviewing with 5 adults as a 16-year-old, no other job interview process feels quite so intimidating. And the next piece that was really beneficial was the actual content about philanthropy and how it works. So the content about endowment funds and how they work, for example, was really helpful when I was advocating for my university to divest their endowment fund from fossil fuels, which actually resulted in them divesting from coal and tar sands. And it was all really great introductory content for someone interested in going into philanthropy. And finally, the mentorship aspect of FPP was really key. It's been really helpful to keep in touch with FPP mentors as I've been starting out in my career, especially on that first job search after college. Joe actually served as a reference for the job I have now, so thank you, Joe. And as the alumni base gets larger and now TPI extending to multiple communities, the mentorship and network benefits are just going to get stronger every single year. And I know I'm almost out of time, so I will just leave you with this. I believe that we're living in one of the most important centuries for humanity. We're facing some very big challenges, and the people who are going to solve them are going to be in our generation. TPI is an investment in the future, and this program both inspires and empowers young leaders who will go on to solve some of the world's biggest challenges. So with that, I will turn things over to Sydney.
Thanks so much, Molly. So as Rick mentioned, I'm Sydney Rayburn. I am about to graduate from Brown University with a degree in public health, and I've been a TPI board member since 2019. And I just want to echo a lot of what Molly said. Being a part of FPP was truly a foundational experience in shaping not just my academic career, but also my professional interests. The program really taught me some lifelong skills, not just the actual content of the knowledge about philanthropy and nonprofits, but also other skills like collaborating and critical thinking, which were truly invaluable, not just at my time at Brown, but also throughout my job search. I found that these skills really helped me guide myself with an air of professionalism. And also FPP helped me build an incredible network of peers and mentors that I still keep in contact with today. And I'll be going into sustainability consulting. And so those skills that I mentioned, like collaboration and critical thinking, are much needed in the industry. So just ultimately, I think I want to stress to you all the importance of pre-professional students access to TPI so that they can build these skills and we can foster the next generation of philanthropists. I'd now like to hand it over to Remy, who is a 2015 FPP graduate, and he serves as our senior program officer for TPI.
Thank you. Yeah, as she said, I was 2015 graduate of the program, and 2019 graduate of University of Illinois, as Rick mentioned. Graduated there with a degree in global studies, kind of focusing a lot more on technically like responsible innovation, and a lot of that did come from my time in TPI FPP, kind of being able to learn a little bit more about ways that I can still affect effective change in the world, but still having responsible aspect of that, and kind of more of a philanthropic lens, which I think was the most important thing that was really for me, was just being able to see everything through a lens. So as I am now the senior program officer, I've been able to work with all of our affiliates, and so we have a pretty wide affiliate network in just the couple years that we've been able to start reaching out to other communities across the country. So it is fully very wide in terms of the range. So it started obviously in Oak Park, Illinois. And then, Grand Island, Nebraska was the first one after that. But now we've been able to reach out to, West Virginia. We have a program in Beckley, West Virginia. We have the program in Grand Island. We have also a program in Buffalo, in New York. And then we are also starting another program in Houston. And then we have a couple more starting in the Chicagoland area. And it's kind of spreading from there. So it, very much, full national scale. And each of those, the interesting part though, I think, is each of those communities are very different in terms of their makeup, in terms of how they're approaching the program, in terms of how the program itself is affecting, the students and the community as a whole. It's able to really personalize itself very well to each individual situation and really, create the change that is best suited for the community by the people that are in the community, that are going to be the future leaders of that community, the youth that we have in the high schools now. So that's what we've been able to see. And so now I'm going to be able to turn it over to one of the people that are, part of Grand Island, Kendra. She was, the initially more of like a mentor role, but now has taken a lot more of a coordinator role. And she's going to be able to tell you about the Grand Island as a whole. So go ahead, Kendra.
Good evening. At our foundation, specifically, the 3 Pillars curriculum has made an impact on the youth by getting them involved with nonprofits in our area that some of those youth didn't even know existed. It's helped shape them into leaders as they're going out into the world as adults, and really given them a chance to explore and appreciate their community in ways that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do before. Whether that be through granting the dollars to local nonprofits, raising those dollars for granting, or just getting out into the community for different volunteer opportunities that are available to them. It's also opened the door for them to build an impactful network with adult leaders in the community, whether that be through their mentors or through making those donor asks in their community. For us as a foundation specifically, it's also given us a chance to build not only a base of future donors, but it's also given us a chance to grow leaders that can serve on boards in our community if they choose to come back to our community one day, and create a lasting legacy for our foundation for generations to come. So we really appreciate the opportunity to get the chance to share the 3 Pillars curriculum with our community. So I will now turn it back to Rick.
Yes, thank you, Kendra. Kendra is doing a great job in Greater Grand Island Community Foundation and the kids they have in the Youth Philanthropy Board, as they call it there. I mentioned earlier that FPP is really the predecessor to TPI, and that is very much the case. And in fact, to just give you a 10-year perspective on what FPP has accomplished, just in a few numbers. And as we've said, the 3 pillars are fundraising, grant making, and volunteering. Well, over the last 10 years of FPP, the fund that they started through their fundraising, which started at zero, is now at the latest about $1.3 million. Out of that, they've been able to grant at the same time over that 10 years, almost $300,000 in grants to community organizations. And at the same time, providing over 2,000 hours of community service. These are outstanding numbers, just not in terms of how large they are, but how much of an impact they've been able to make in the communities that they serve. So to speak more a little bit about that, I'd like to turn that over to Grace, Grace Dirks, who has more to say about her experiences as they've carried over to Fordham.
Wow, I've got to update that photo. But thank you so much, Rick, and thank you to everybody else who's spoken already, really taking words out of my mouth. But as Rick said, and others, my name is Grace Dirks. I'm a graduate of the FPP class of 2018. I am a current TPI board member, and I am also a senior at Fordham University in New York City, where I'm majoring in humanitarian studies, and I have minors in Irish studies and psychology. I'm currently in the middle of my 4th nonprofit internship since starting college. I currently work at an organization called NGO CSW New York, which works to bring civil society feminist voices from around the globe to the United Nations. I am also president of the Humanitarian Student Union on my campus, which is a student-run organization that aims to educate and spread awareness about humanitarian issues, current, past, and ongoing. We host different weekly meeting topics, and they're educational and also discussion-based, talking with students about how to address the crises in our world, along with how the world is handling them and what that really means in the larger scope of things. For instance, this week we are going to be talking about a few of the humanitarian crises that are being swept underneath the news cycle because of the Ukrainian crisis. But other topics we've talked about in the past are reviewing the failures in the Rwandan genocide, or sexual abuse at various different nonprofit in the humanitarian sector. So we really try to cover a broad range of spectrum of topics. We also host fundraisers. We most recently did one for medical needs for refugees from the Ukrainian conflict, raising over $1,000. But my time as an FPP participant really helped shape all of these things that I've been able to do since I was in college. I really found that it emboldened my leadership abilities, particularly between peers and myself. I felt when I came out of the program, I had so much more to offer in terms of organizationally between my peers and myself, and being able to work together towards a common goal, really. And I felt that a lot of the people I was working with didn't necessarily come from a similar background or would have had a program that could have provided them with those skills. And so I forever will be grateful to FPP and now TPI for so many different additions and broadening of my horizons. And speaking of Ukraine and FPP, I would like to introduce Claire, who is a current FPP student and is going to talk about some recent work that FPP has done on expanding their philanthropy outside of the Oak Park River Forest community.
Hello, my name is Claire, and I'm a member of the senior cohort of FPP. In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukrainian territory. Museums, educational institutions, and homes were destroyed as a result of the violence against the Ukrainian people. As citizens of the United States, we experienced a fraction of the impact of this war due to increases in gas and food. The war in Eastern Europe seems far from our borders, but is near to our hearts. Listening to the refugees as they shared how precious items were lost behind when they evacuated their homes compelled the student cohorts in FPP to find ways to help. In March, we began brainstorming ideas to develop a grassroots program to address some of the Ukrainian people's needs. The team met via Zoom to define roles and finalize action plans. We partnered with Pete's Fresh Market in Oak Park to gather food items from shoppers and prepare donations. The development and execution of the project was student-led, and each committee chairperson was a member of the senior cohort. The Ukrainian aid took place on March 14th to the 16th at Pete's store in Oak Park. The event was staffed by 50 volunteers working approximately 170 volunteer hours, collecting 60 large boxes of donated items, weighing about 2,000 in total, and $55,500 to defray the shipping costs. On those days, shoppers were greeted at the doors by FPP teams who gave them a list of items that are in great need to Ukrainian refugees, such as soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, diapers, baby products, vitamin hygiene items, first aid, medical products, school supplies, and more. Shoppers who added these items to their shopping list then donated them upon exiting the store. Many shoppers also gave cash donations, which will help defray the cost of shipping air transport to Warsaw. From there, the items will be distributed to Ukrainian women, children, and the elderly who have relocated there with virtually nothing. And I'll hand it back to Rick.
Great, and thank you, Claire. That is I think probably one of the most exciting volunteer ventures that I believe FPP has ever taken on. It's a huge challenge. It's a huge project, and obviously is going to have a huge impact, not only for the Ukrainian refugees, who have fled to other countries, but actually those that may also end up here in the Chicago area. So Claire, to you and your team and others that were involved so much in this, thank you so much for that effort and example of what the next generation can do in improving the world. So I want to, I know we have some questions on the in the chat box. If there are other questions that people would like to ask, go ahead and put those questions on the chat room. And Joe, turn it over to you for a response.
Well, thank you, Rick. And Grace, unlike you, I want to keep my picture because that one has more hair. We have one question right at the top from Michelle, and it was kind of answered, but she said, can you please tell us again the relationship between TPI and the Future Philanthropist program? Is this a nationwide expansion? Yes, the TPI is our concentrated effort to take what we've learned from FPP and offer to other communities across the country. What's interesting about it, to say even more, is that the FPP has been a dynamic, organic organization. It's far different than it was 10 years ago, but we still have the basic 3 pillars. And we are now actually benefiting, learning from what Kendra's doing and the other programs and incorporating those things into the FPP. So it's a very dynamic two-way street relationship. Yeah. We had another question, and Rick, I would turn this one to you. What's the minimum amount of money that an organization ought to have to grant in a TPI program?
So in a startup at the minimum level is $10,000, and we've determined that actually is the most is the first level of impact that a group of teens could use to decide on grant making from there. I know FPP started at 25,000. I believe Kendra, you started at 20,000. Right. And
yep, that's correct.
Right. And so there are some initiatives that fit locally, but we're recommending 10,000 at the minimum, and it can go up from there. This past year, FPP, again, has been around for 12 years now. Last year granted $75,000 to the Oak Park River Forest Service Area, which includes part of the Austin neighborhood in Chicago. So, Joe, other questions?
Yeah, Rick, just before we move on from there, do you remember offhand how much in grant requests the juniors this year had to whittle down to get to 75?
It was usually typical of all of the years. After they sent out their RFP and got proposals back for funding, the total amount of funds requested was somewhere in the neighborhood of $172,000. They had the juniors had 50,000 to spend, and so as many of you who have been associated with foundations, if you have been, know how hard a task that is, even if you have pretty good criteria. And this is where the whole aspect of consensus building comes about. Their grant making decisions are consensus, not voting. Voting is too easy, as we say. So they have to build a case and agree that this fits for everyone at the end of the day. So
great. The next question would be, and Remy, you might want to talk to this one too. What's the minimum, and Kendra, what would be the minimum number of students that we should take in a class?
Yeah, I can briefly address in terms of an individual cohort. We kind of usually aim for a little bit larger of a cohort, about 20, 25 students, just because that tends to be the best dynamic for the students. The most, a large part of the program itself is really interested in being able to have discussions and a larger discourse amongst students, from different parts of the community. So having a larger group is definitely kind of what we always strive for. That being said, we do have some of our affiliates who are starting with smaller groups and then are kind of getting their footing to be able to build up from there. So, some of them have started off with 6 and then are moving up from there. And some of them have, 15, 20, 40 students in a cohort. So it is pretty easy and a little bit more malleable to adjust to it. We just tend to aim for a nice solid number to have a wide range. The only thing that we look for is at least a number of about 5 students per mentor. We don't want to get any more than that because that just is a bit too many students to realistically handle meaningfully.
Yeah. And then one last question, and this would go out to the group, and I'm going to give a small answer to it. And what should you be looking for in choosing mentors? And I would just say someone who understands that it's a 2-year commitment by the students and it's a 2-year commitment by the mentor. During that first year, you get to learn and know each other, and in the second year, you hit the ground running because you build a lot of trust. So let me throw that out to the group about what should you be looking for in mentors when you decide to take on a TPI program?
Yeah, I can briefly mention on that. I'd say a lot of people tend to assume that it has to be someone that knows a lot about nonprofit or the philanthropic sector, or in general, a lot more detailed knowledge. And we found that isn't really necessarily the case. You can kind of learn a lot of it as we go through. That's what we have the materials and the curriculum for. Really, the best types of mentors are just the ones that are able to build a good relationship with the students, get along with them, make jokes and stuff. That's going to make the best situation for learning for the students, and also growth to be able to sustain a relationship in high school and college, and as they enter the young professional world. So I'd say that's probably the most important characteristic of a mentor.
Yeah.
For
We
me,
have, go ahead, Grace.
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, in my 2 years working with the program and then my time as a TPI board member, I worked with a lot of different mentors, because not only do you get to know your own you have a little group, and so I got to know my mentor very well, but I also got to know other ones through different projects that we worked on and things. And the thing that I understood the most about all of them was their passion and their willingness to see a 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old's voice as equal to theirs. Their voices, their opinions matter, because that's truly the gift that FPP gave me. It's feeling empowered as a teenager and feeling like my voice had a real purpose. And if you have a mentor that understands that that's the essence of this program, I think that is the best way to get an effective mentor.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Joe and Grace. Good comments on that. And we're getting to the point where we're running out of time. But
we have one more question.
Right,
one more question. And what is and this one's for you. What is the long-term vision, and how are you? Go get them.
Yeah, well, I should say on behalf of the 14-member board of TPI, all of us have been working very, very hard to get this program launched the last 2 years in the midst of COVID, which has been a challenge, but everybody has really hung in there and done their level best to expand this program. And that is the long-term vision. Much like any beginning of any program, it starts locally and grows from there. So the model that we've developed at FPP and now want to expand across the country is actually a fit in any community, and that's what we want to see. That's the long-term vision, from Houston or Buffalo to the Appalachians, to Grand Island and California, and all over. It doesn't matter. This program can get traction in any of those communities, and really will be the force for helping this generation develop into the kind of change makers that we all hope they will be. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention tonight and your participation. I would also ask that you help in any way you can all of us that are on this screen, and the hundreds of youth that have gone through this program so far on their behalf, and ask you to help support this effort nationwide. And we'll be thankful to receive those gifts. We'll be stewards that will guard and use those funds in particular on their behalf. So I want to also tell you that Joe Smith will match any and all donations up to $2,000 from tonight's program. We'll say we also have an anonymous donor who will match the second $2,000 of donations. So we have a good start. So let us hear from you. And please feel free to contact any of us for any reason. You can get that off of our website. And thank you and good night.